Hello fellow time traveler. Tonight we journey to the dusty cradle of civilization, ancient Mesopotamia, where you, yes you, make the questionable decision to duck into a tavern just as the sun begins to bleed into the baked horizon. The air is thick with heat, carrying the scent of sun-roasted dung, sweat-soaked linen, and something sharp, maybe vinegar, maybe blood. You've arrived in the bustling city of Ur, circa 2100 BC, and spoiler alert, you probably won't survive this. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video, subscribe, and ring that bell so you'll always know when we are off to a new time-traveling adventure together. In return, I promise to stand out by offering you the most interesting and valuable content that'll help you drift off to sleep without a hitch. Let us know in the comments where you're listening from and what time it is for you right now. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You squint up at the sky. No clouds. Just an oppressive golden dome of sky pressing down on a maze of clay and stone. The streets of Ur are buzzing with activity. Donkeys bray, merchants shout over each other. A child cries because another child stole his tiny figurine of the goddess Inanna. And you? You're sweating in layers of linen that definitely weren't designed for this climate. You were told to avoid the local taverns, which should have made them even more tempting. But nobody told you just how many smells could coexist in one alley. Spices, spoiled grain, sun-baked sewage. Your nostrils protest, but your feet betray you, drawn by the murmur of drunken songs and slurred prayer-like chants. The tavern doesn't exactly invite you in. It's more like an accidental pile of mud brick with a carved wooden door that hangs crooked on its hinge. But it stands, and inside is something resembling shade and company. You hesitate, just for a second, but your thirst is louder than your instincts. The second you push the door open, the air inside slaps you in the face like a warm fish. It's humid, hotter than outside somehow, and thick with the scent of fermented dates, sweat, and something vaguely barnyard-like. Not a single face looks welcoming, but you're in too deep now. The door groans as it closes behind you, and just like that, you're committed. It takes your eyes a moment to adjust. There are no windows, just little slits high up in the walls to let in some light, more like suggestions of sun. The floor is packed dirt, sticky in spots where spilled beer has fermented into a treacherous paste. Overhead, wooden beams creak softly, probably contemplating their retirement after centuries of duty. A few oil lamps flicker with weak orange light, casting shadows that make everything look twice as aggressive. The people here are sunburned, sinewy, and suspicious. They are dressed in simple tunics, some with frayed hems, others dyed faintly, a sign of modest wealth or good laundering. All of them stop and stare. You're not local. That much is obvious. Your sandals are too clean, your tunic too symmetrical, your gaze too hopeful. Here's a fun historical fact to sweat over. Many Mesopotamian taverns were run by women, often widows or priestesses with complicated side hustles. They served as watering holes, information exchanges, and occasionally brothels. Which is all very colorful until you realize you're now in one, unarmed, unaccompanied, and, let's face it, underprepared. You shuffle forward, awkwardly navigating through bodies lounging on mats or hunched over low wooden tables. No one smiles. You consider saying hello in Sumerian, but decide against it. Your accent's probably atrocious, and this is not the crowd that appreciates tourist charm. A loud belch erupts from the far end of the room. That's your welcome. You spot an empty bench near a cracked wall and make for it, every step accompanied by squelchy floor sounds you try not to think about. You pass a man asleep with his face in a bowl of barley stew. Another is arguing with a goat tethered beside him. The goat seems to be winning. Here's a tidbit you didn't expect. In ancient Mesopotamia, taverns were sometimes considered subversive spaces, potential hubs for political gossip and divine dissent. As a result, the law codes, including Hammurabi's famous set, were especially harsh on tavern owners. A poorly run tavern could get you drowned in the river. Charming, isn't it? You finally lower yourself onto the bench. It creaks ominously. You try not to inhale too deeply. Your plan, if you had one, was to grab a drink, maybe chat up a local, and call it an immersive cultural experience. But now your stomach is in negotiation with your survival instinct. And unfortunately, that instinct has never been to just quietly leave. Outside, the sun has just dipped beneath the horizon, and a chorus of frogs begins their nightly rehearsal. Inside, someone lights another oil lamp, and the flicker catches the eye of a bearded man across the room. He grins. Not kindly. You're officially on the menu. There's a historical debate that might interest you. Some scholars argue whether Mesopotamian taverns were exclusively for the lower classes, or if they occasionally welcomed priests, traders, even scribes slumming it on payday. Judging by this place, the clientele tonight leans towards sketchy mercenaries and possible pickpockets. A clay mug slams onto the table beside you. You didn't order anything. It smells like overripe figs and despair. Too late to back out. The journey has begun. The mug stares at you like it knows something you don't. It's chipped, vaguely sticky, and filled to the brim with a dark liquid that shifts sluggishly as if it has somewhere else to be. You take a cautious sniff. It smells ancient. Like fermented molasses left too long in the sun, with a faint whisper of leather and regret. This, you assume, is beer. Mesopotamian beer. Fun fact, Mesopotamian beer was unfiltered, served in large vats or mugs, and drunk communally through long straws to avoid the chunks of grain floating on top. Your mug has no straw. Just chunks. As you hesitate, a wiry man slouches into the seat across from you. His beard is uneven, his teeth few, and he's got the look of someone who chews on pottery for fun. He says something in a language you can almost, but not quite, understand. Your nod is weak, but it seems acceptable. He points to your drink, then mimes drinking with exaggerated cheer, finishing with a thumbs-up gesture that feels wildly anachronistic. It's drink or offend. You raise the mug with a hand that trembles slightly. The rim is crusty. You try not to think about it as you take a sip. It's sour. Thick. There's a bitter sweetness underneath, like old honey, but mostly it tastes like someone wrung out a wet carpet and dared to dream. You cough. Your tablemate roars with laughter and slaps your back hard enough to remind your spine who's boss. You've passed the first test. The tavern begins to settle around you. Suspicion becomes mild curiosity. A few people go back to their dice games and haphazard singing. One particularly brave child wanders in, immediately gets shooed out by a woman in a soot-smeared apron. That, you assume, is the tavern keeper. She's formidable, with arms like amphorae and a face carved from stubbornness. Her eyes narrow when she sees you, but she doesn't intervene, yet. Here's the thing. Taverns in Mesopotamia were often informal community centers as well as places of escape. Gossip, trade deals, even courtship rituals played out beneath their crumbling ceilings. But they also attracted the city's loneliest, loudest, and most short-tempered. The man across from you leans in and grins wide. He taps his mug against yours with a dull clink, then drains it in 3 chugs. His beard now carries a frothy foam that gives him the appearance of a sudsy Santa. He wipes it with his sleeve, belches, and slaps the table. Another drink appears, again, unasked for. You drink again. This time, it's a little easier. You think you even detect a note of cinnamon. Or possibly mildew. Just as you start to settle in, the tavern door creaks open again, and two new figures step in. One's a broad-shouldered man with arms like tree trunks. The other is gaunt, sharp-nosed, and glances around like he's memorizing faces for a later crime. They bring the stench of the outside world with them. Dust, smoke, possibly donkey. They scan the room. You avoid eye contact. Historians still argue whether these types of taverns functioned as organized businesses or more like semi-legal safe houses for the poor and displaced. Based on the clientele trickling in, tonight leans toward the latter. The newcomers stomp toward the hearth at the center of the room. It's not lit for heat, no one would dare, but to burn pungent herbs meant to mask the smell of human proximity. A cloud of incense drifts through the air, catching in your throat. You try to suppress a cough. Fail. And suddenly, half the room is watching you again. The man across from you is still smiling, but now with a touch less mirth. He says something again, faster this time. You catch the word for scribe. Maybe spy. It's hard to say. He taps your arm with his finger. A little too hard. You raise your mug again, trying to smile. Deflect, disarm. A classic strategy. Except the mug slips from your damp fingers and tips over, right onto the table. The contents splash across the wood and dribble onto your companion's tunic. Time slows. He blinks. You blink. Then, with the elegance of a catapult misfiring, he flips the entire table. Everyone stands. You stand too, mostly because the bench is now sideways. Your heart pounds like ceremonial drums at a harvest festival. The room goes quiet except for the buzz of flies and the distant sound of a lute playing off-key. And that's when the tavern keeper speaks. One word. Sharp, clear, and deeply unimpressed. Instantly, the bearded man backs down, muttering something about bad omens and rotten luck. He waves off the spill with a grunt and stumbles away, but not before shooting you one final look, a look that says, "This isn't over." And also possibly you owe me beer. You're sweating again. The incense isn't helping. You lower yourself back to the now upright bench, trying to look small and non-threatening, which is hard when you're the only one blinking like a lost sheep. Another mug appears. You don't know where they are coming from. It's like the tavern has an infinite supply of these prehistoric cocktails. You drink it anyway. Quirky side note, some Mesopotamian brews were blessed with animal fats, herbs, or even hallucinogenic roots, allegedly to heighten religious experiences or dreams. You hope that's not what you're drinking. But the walls do seem a little more wobbly than they were before. The tavern settles once more, but the tension is still thick in the air, like the cloying sweetness of too many date cakes. You're learning quickly. In this place, every move you make has consequences, even if all you meant to do was wet your parched throat. Outside, the frogs are joined by the yipping of some dog, or possibly jackal. You can't tell anymore. A fly lands on your mug, then takes off, disappointed. You are now one drink in, one enemy made, and two apologies behind. And the night has barely started. Your mug is empty again. You don't remember drinking all of it, but it's gone, and now your tongue feels like it's been dusted in barley flour and panic. You glance around and catch a flash of movement near the bar, a long table cluttered with clay jugs, grease-streaked bowls, and a small idol of Ninkasi, the goddess of beer. Her eyes seem to twinkle, which is probably just the lamplight, probably. You stand up, trying to look casual, like someone who hasn't just insulted a man with fists the size of bricks. Your legs are slow to agree with you. It's like they know this is a mistake and would prefer to sit back down and wait it out. You take a step. You bump into someone. Correction, you bump into 3 someones. They were behind you, clustered together like overripe figs, 3 local men with the kind of faces that make you reconsider your life choices. Their tunics are frayed but clean. One wears a copper amulet shaped like a scorpion. Another has a scar slicing through one eyebrow. The third, taller, quieter, stares at you like you're already a ghost. You try to mutter an apology, but before the words leave your mouth, the shortest one mutters something sharp and jabs a finger at your feet. You look down. Your sandals. You wore them inside. You wore your sandals into a Mesopotamian tavern. Fun fact, removing one's sandals indoors, especially in places of gathering, was a sign of respect throughout much of Mesopotamia. It wasn't universal, but many taverns, especially those run by women or near temples, treated it as sacred etiquette. And you just tramped in, blissfully unaware, dragging in street filth like a walking insult. The short man waves toward the barkeep, animated, loud. His tones not friendly, not curious, accusatory. The tall one just keeps watching you. His eyes narrow like he's weighing whether you're worth the energy. You try to say something again, something placating, something clever, but it comes out in a nervous babble of half-remembered phrases. You throw in the word peace 3 times. It doesn't help. Another man joins in, uninvited, and suddenly this is a thing. A whole thing. People start murmuring. Heads turn. The tavern keeper sighs audibly, clearly not her first rodeo, and wipes her hands on a cloth that was probably beige once upon a dynasty. This is spiraling. You shift awkwardly, lifting one foot slightly in a sad little pantomime of look. I'll take them off now, but the damage is done. Sandals indoors. Offensive posture. No formal greeting. You are, in the local social hierarchy, somewhere between wandering fool and deliberately provocative spy. Here's something for your growing collection of regrets. Mesopotamian society, though not monolithic, revolved around strict codes of hospitality and behavior. Failure to observe them wasn't just rude, it could be seen as dangerous, even divine disrespect. People took omens from anything, and your blundering presence is starting to feel like one. The argument picks up steam. Scar-eyebrow waves toward your table, as if listing your crimes. A woman chimes in from the corner. You think she's defending you, at least until she gestures toward your hair, then mimes combing her fingers and sneering. Okay, maybe not. Historians still argue whether foreigners were commonly welcome in Mesopotamian taverns, or tolerated only when accompanied by locals. Either way, you didn't bring a buddy, and it's showing. Suddenly, the tall man speaks. Just one word. It shuts everyone up. Even the barkeep freezes mid-wipe. The word, roughly translated, means outsider, but it carries connotations that range from stranger to scapegoat to pre-sacrificial offering. Cool. And now he's walking toward you. He stops about a foot away. You can smell the coppery tang of sweat on him, and something herbal, maybe incense, maybe dried blood. Then he does something unexpected. He reaches down and unties your sandal. You blink. He removes both, with absolute ceremony, then sets them beside the hearth. The crowd watches in silence. Then he says something low and calm. You don't understand most of it, but the tone is unmistakable. Next time, remember. It's not an offer. It's a warning wrapped in a lesson, sealed with quiet threat. You nod. Vigorously. Possibly too vigorously. The mood in the room shifts again. The tension ebbs, slightly. A few people chuckle. The woman who insulted your hair snorts and returns to her game. Skybrow still looks annoyed, but he shrugs and moves on. Crisis averted. Mostly. You shuffle back to your bench, now barefoot and spiritually humbled. Your tablemate from earlier is gone. Someone else sits there now, carving a tiny bird into the wood with a blunt knife. You sit anyway. There's no drink waiting this time. Which is just as well, because your stomach is busy filing a complaint with your nerves. The beer, the confrontation, the heat, it's a cocktail of nausea. You try deep breathing. You regret deep breathing. Another fun tidbit. Some fringe researchers suggest taverns doubled as informal arbitration centers, where minor disputes were settled by public humiliation, storytelling duels, or challenges like drinking contests. You may have just experienced the barefoot version. A small girl walks past, balancing a plate of roasted locusts. She pauses, offers one to you. You shake your head. She shrugs and skips off. Behind you, someone starts a new song, something slow, minor key, and probably about death, goats, or love. Maybe all three. The lute is badly tuned, but the singer's voice is haunting. Or maybe that's the nausea. You close your eyes for a moment, just a moment, and try to exhale the stress. The sandals. The shouting. The beer that might be slowly dissolving your organs. You're still in the game, but barely. And the sun hasn't even fully set yet. The light changes. It's not dramatic, but it's unmistakable. That warm, flickering amber that filtered in through the slats and cracks of the mud brick walls turns dusky. Outside, the sun is bowing out, dragging the last of its burnt orange rays down below the rooftops. Inside, the tavern grows darker, and the clay lamps begin to matter more. You're still barefoot, still mildly terrified, and increasingly aware that your welcome here has the structural integrity of wet papyrus. The air thickens. Less from heat now, more from intention. Conversations quiet. Shadows lengthen. Someone near the door starts whispering an incantation over a pouch of salt. You think, that can't be good. Fun fact, in Mesopotamian culture, dusk was the threshold between the world of the living and the domain of spirits. Many believed that nightfall thinned the veil between seen and unseen, drawing out ghosts, demons, and divine watchers. A second later, the door creaks open, and for the third time tonight, you wish you'd stayed home. In walks a man dressed far too cleanly for this place. His robe, dyed deep indigo, shimmers slightly in the lamplight. His beard is neatly oiled, and around his neck hangs a carved obsidian pendant in the shape of a lion's head. It's beautiful. It's ominous. It's also the kind of thing someone wears when they don't need to say they have power, because the amulet says it for them. A sharp intake of breath moves through the room like a breeze. He's a baru, a diviner. You've read about these guys. Part priest, part political analyst, part professional creepy uncle. The baru were entrusted with reading omens, inspecting the entrails of sacrificial animals, and interpreting celestial signs to guide kings and settle disputes. Some were revered. Others were less so. This one doesn't look like a neighborhood favorite. He surveys the room with slow, calculating eyes. When they land on you, you feel something inside you go very, very still. Like your nervous system has politely stepped out for air. The tavern keeper greets him with a low nod. No smile. He speaks softly. You can't make out the words, but the barkeep gestures toward the back, toward a closed door. Probably a private room. The baru lingers. His eyes drift back to you. And stay there. He tilts his head. Then, of course, he changes course and walks directly to your table. You swallow. Hard. He stands over you for a long moment, then takes the seat opposite you without invitation. The knife carver beside you quietly picks up their little wooden bird and vacates the table without a sound. That is not encouraging. The Baru smiles, but there's no warmth in it. He says something. You shake your head gently. Language barrier. He tries again, this time slower. One word you catch, Namtaru. You've seen that word. It means fate or plague. Possibly both. Your breath hitches. He places a small object on the table between you. A shard of bone. Smooth, polished. He taps it once, then gestures at you. You stare at it. Then at him. Back to it. This is a test. Some fringe accounts suggest certain taverns doubled as hunting grounds for priests and diviners seeking omens or sacrifices. The line between spiritual practice and intimidation could be blurry. You reach out, hesitantly, and touch the bone. It's warm. Too warm. He nods. Then pulls out a small leather pouch. From it, he spills a few items onto the table. Bits of clay, fragments of shell, a copper pin, and what looks disturbingly like a small dried tongue. He begins arranging them in a circle, chanting softly. The tavern noise dims again, this time out of respect, fear, or the kind of communal don't get involved attitude shared by anyone who's ever seen something deeply weird in a public place. The diviner mutters a phrase, then stops, and looks up. The stillness is unbearable. He points to your chest, then to the back room. Then, almost imperceptibly, he frowns. You don't know what any of that means. But your bones do. And they are saying, leave. Now. Historians still argue whether omens drawn in tavern settings were considered legitimate or simply manipulative theatrics by more powerful individuals. But let's not split cuneiform hairs. You're not sticking around to find out if this ends in entrails. You stand. So does he. For a second, you think this is it. He's going to mark you. Curse you. Call down the wrath of Nurgle or unleash a small, smoke-based lizard that eats tourists. Instead, he gives you a very small, very cold smile. Then turns. And walks toward the back room. Just like that, the pressure vanishes. The air breathes again. Conversations start up, quieter than before. Someone coughs. You sit back down, stunned. But you're not alone for long. The tavern keeper approaches, this time with something in her hand, a bowl. It smells much better than the beer, garlic, lentils, onion, and something vaguely citrusy. She sets it down in front of you and, shockingly, says something with what might be sympathy in her voice. This, you understand, is consolation soup. A moment later, she places a sprig of dried sage beside it. You've just received an informal blessing. Or maybe a warning. Hard to tell in Mesopotamia. You dip your fingers into the soup. It's hot, surprisingly tasty, and miraculously not beer-based. You chew slowly, letting the flavor calm your nerves. The hum of voices returns around you, the din of normal tavern life reasserting itself. Outside, the sky is nearly black. And you, lucky you, are still alive. But that man, the Baru, looked at you like he'd already read your ending. And he didn't like it. You don't finish the soup. Not because it's bad, it's actually decent, in a this will keep me from dying of dehydration and regret kind of way, but because your appetite has fled somewhere east of the Euphrates. You stare at the half-empty bowl, its little swirl of lentils forming what might resemble an eye. Or maybe that's just paranoia settling in like silt. The Baru is gone. The backroom door sits slightly ajar, revealing nothing but darkness and a flickering oil lamp. You don't want to look too long. You have the irrational, very specific fear that if you do, you'll see him again, just his face, lit from below like a cautionary tale. You look elsewhere. The tavern has shifted into its night phase. Shadows stretch like cats across the dirt floor. Patrons have settled into low murmurs, dice games, and the occasional drawn-out sigh that means, "I'm too tired to care if the barley tax triples tomorrow." The smell has also evolved. Less sweat, more burning resin, and a rich undertone of something you recognize too late: incense made from galbanum, a resin burned to drive off evil spirits and particularly nasty ghosts. Neat. You lean back against the wall, trying to become one with it. There's a mural behind you, chipped and faded, but still visible under the flickering light. It shows a lion-headed god wrestling a serpent. The lion is winning, though the serpent looks like it's planning a sequel. And then comes the sound. A slow, slithering scrape just behind the bar. It stops. Starts again. Closer this time. You look. So does everyone else. From behind a tattered reed curtain, a low, wet cough echoes out. Then silence. And then, like the world's worst magician, a man emerges. If you can call him that. He's tall, emaciated, cloaked in a patchwork of stained linens. His eyes are deep-set, black-ringed, and unfocused, like he's halfway between dreams and a very bad hangover. His skin is pocked with old burns or lesions, difficult to tell in this light. A few patrons mutter under their breath and avert their eyes. One whispers a word you half recognize: Mwaru, message bringer, or omen carrier. The barkeep doesn't move. The man shuffles to the center of the tavern and raises a trembling hand. His fingernails are cracked. In that same hand is a carved wooden object, something between a flute and a bone whistle. He lifts it to his mouth and begins to play. Now, play might be generous. It's more like a wheeze disguised as a melody. But it's deliberate, structured, and very old. The tune snakes its way across the room like it's searching for something. Or someone. You. It feels like it's playing at you. You glance around. No one's stopping him. No one's throwing stale barley cakes or yelling for him to take it outside. They just wait. You can't take your eyes off his. And then, as suddenly as he began, he stops. Points the whistle at you. And speaks. It's a riddle. You don't understand every word, but the rhythm is clear. It's some kind of challenge, an ancient puzzle. The last phrase echoes clearly: "Tell me what has no mouth but devours." You freeze. No one helps you. Riddles, in ancient Mesopotamia, weren't just tavern games, they were serious cultural artifacts. Some were used in initiation rites. Others served as subtle legal tests or veiled threats. Getting one wrong could mean embarrassment, or worse. You rack your brain. Fire? Time? Sand? You try fire, cautiously. He stares. Then he laughs, a rasping, dusty cough laugh that sounds like it should come with a lungful of locusts. He repeats the riddle. Slower. You blurt out, "Time." A pause. Then, miracle of miracles, he smiles. Not nicely, but approvingly. He turns, shuffles away, disappears behind the reed curtain again. You collapse slightly in your seat. Historians still argue whether figures like this were actual traveling seers, half-mad prophets, or just local outcasts with a flair for performance. Regardless, no one in the tavern seems interested in challenging him. Or you. But now people are watching you again. Not with contempt this time. Not quite. It's more like cautious curiosity, as if you've accidentally passed some kind of test. You've gone from foreign fool to possible curse deflector. Someone even refills your bowl. Progress. You breathe slowly, trying to recover. Your palms are damp. You're still barefoot. But you've survived another social landmine, and it's starting to feel like that might be the theme of the night. Across the room, two men begin chanting softly. It's a low hum, rhythmic, melodic. A table drum joins in. One man claps in time, but the beat is off, and no one corrects him. The song builds. It's beautiful, mournful. You realize it's a song about Inanna's descent into the underworld, a classic, tragic favorite in places like this. The version they are singing is particularly grim. In this one, Inanna doesn't come back. Great. Comforting. The woman who insulted your hair earlier tosses you a figure. You catch it without thinking. Maybe that's an apology. Or bait. Still, it's a nice fig. You eat it. Outside, jackals bark in the distance. Somewhere, a jug shatters. Someone swears loudly in a dialect you definitely don't recognize. Life, as they say, goes on. But inside you, something's shifted. Not just the nausea. Not just the stress. A creeping sense that this tavern is watching. Not just the people. The place. The cracked bricks, the dim lamplight, the old symbols carved into the floor under your stool. You'd laugh it off, but your skin has that "you're being studied by the universe" feeling. And it doesn't feel wrong. Because here's another uncomfortable truth. Mesopotamians didn't always draw clean lines between animate and inanimate. Buildings could be sacred. Objects might house spirits. Even taverns could remember. Especially taverns. You grip the edge of the table. You've made it this far. But the night is only beginning. The fig, surprisingly, does not kill you. You savor the sweetness as if it might be the last thing in this godforsaken dimension that doesn't come with consequences. And to your very cautious optimism, nothing immediately explodes, hisses, or recites an esoteric curse. You allow yourself to exhale. A mistake. Because that's exactly when the man across the room starts screaming. It's not a startled yell. Not a stub-toe sort of thing. It's the scream of a man whose brain is suddenly very aware that his world is no longer stable. Everyone stops. The drum dies. The clapping ceases. Even the woman who's been grinding barley flour for what seems like an eternity pauses, her hands mid-motion, staring. The man is writhing now. On the floor. His eyes rolled back. Frothing just a little. His limbs jerk in erratic patterns, like he's trying to dance with a god that doesn't want to lead. Then he speaks. Or rather, something speaks through him. The voice is not his. It's guttural, deep, and cold in a way that makes your spine light up like a reed torch. It walks among you. The beast with no name. The eater of light. It waits. And then, just like that, he collapses, still and twitching, as a trickle of blood slips from one nostril. Someone shouts a word. You hear it clearly. Asaku. Oh no. Asaku demons were feared in Mesopotamian mythology, supernatural beings believed to bring illness, madness, and death. Most famously, they were thought to suck the life from people by day and drive them to feverish delirium by night. Wonderful. You now live in a tavern with questionable beer, unsolicited riddles, and possibly a demon. The barkeep rushes over. So does the old man who's been carving wooden idols. He's apparently a kind of part-time healer or apothecary. He rolls the man to his side, mutters a few prayers to Gula, goddess of healing, and sprinkles ashen crushed myrrh onto his chest. Everyone is still watching. Including you. Especially you. The victim twitches, breathes, moans. He's alive. For now. But no one touches him beyond the basics. There's distance in every gesture. And now, like a ripple through water, eyes begin shifting toward you again. Because guess who wasn't here yesterday? You. Historians still argue whether mental illness, epileptic seizures, and poisoning were misattributed to spiritual possession, or whether possession itself was part of a larger social control narrative. Tonight, you just know that guy is not okay, and people think you might be involved. A young woman, barefoot like you, with streaks of red clay on her arms, edges closer and sits at your table. Her voice is low, cautious. You saw the Baru. It's not a question. You nod slowly. He marked you. Also not a question. You glance toward the back room. Still empty. Still dark. Probably still cursed. The woman introduces herself with a name that sounds like Ninsala, or close enough. She was the one singing earlier, the mezzo-soprano of impending doom. Now, she is staring at you with the look of someone who has seen a few too many omens recently and is no longer in the mood for metaphor. She says something else. You catch ziggurat, shadow, and east wind. Not exactly conversational staples. She pulls something from her satchel and places it on the table, a small, flat tablet. Clay. Still slightly damp. It bears a cuneiform inscription that's either a warning or an oddly specific recipe for goat liver. She points at a word. You recognize one character. Do. Spirit. She taps it 3 times. Looks at you meaningfully. You pretend to understand. Then she pulls out a wax-sealed container and cracks it open. Inside is a paste, sulfur yellow and sharp-smelling. She dips 2 fingers in and marks your forehead. You flinch. It will help, she says, then adds with far less confidence, maybe. This mixture, possibly sulfur and bitumen, was believed in some Mesopotamian circles to repel evil spirits or at least confuse them. Whether it works is still, you know, being debated by ghosts. Ninsala leans closer and says, the Isaku don't like the new moon. You blink. It's the new moon. She nods. Fantastic. That little detail has escaped you until now. And in Mesopotamian lore, the new moon was often considered an in-between time, a spiritual liminal space. Shadows ruled. Boundaries blurred. It was prime haunting season, basically. Outside, the wind kicks up. A howl threads through the broken slats of the tavern's eaves. Dust swirls in through the door, tracing snake patterns across the floor. The man who collapsed groans again. His lips move, but the words are jumbled. Ninsala listens. Her face hardens. He says it's not done. She doesn't say what isn't done. You're really starting to miss modernity. Someone places a small bowl of water at your feet. You didn't see who. Probably not a great sign. A silent offering, maybe, or an attempt to purify the floor around you. Either way, the floor's getting more respect than you are. The tavern's mood sours. Again, you're like a sponge for bad vibes tonight. Your soup is stone cold. Your fig feels like a trap in hindsight. You're marked by a diviner, maybe stalked by a demon, and nobody's offered you shoes. And now, because the universe enjoys variety, someone starts chanting from the rooftop. A high-pitched wail, rhythmic, ancient. You catch only fragments. Error, bringer of fire, devourer. Error, god of mayhem, destroyer of cities. Definitely not someone you want in your evening plans. Fun tidbit. Fringe scholars once proposed that late-night tavern performances like this were a form of chaotic ritual to vent societal stress, letting patrons flirt with doom before returning to their barley taxes. Tonight, it feels less like flirting and more like speed dating with death. The wind dies down. The chant stops. And for one golden moment, the tavern is quiet. Not peaceful. Just holding its breath. Then the lights flicker. You do not scream. Progress. But you do clutch your still warm forehead, wondering if the sulfur paste is supposed to burn this much. You tell yourself it's fine. But somewhere behind the bar, something knocks once. Slowly. You think, that's not fine. You try very hard not to react to the knock. Because if movies have taught you anything, and they haven't, because movies won't exist for another 4,000 years, it's that acknowledging the knock is what gets you dragged into a wall by something with too many eyes. You stay still. Everyone else has frozen too. Except the drunk in the corner, who lets out a snore that sounds vaguely like Nurgle. That doesn't help. The barkeep moves first. He's had enough. Grabs a stick, not a weapon, not really, just something to hold when pretending you have power over the metaphysical, and stomps toward the source of the sound. He throws back the reed curtain behind the bar. Nothing. You exhale. Too soon. From behind the barkeep's shadow, a rat skitters across the floor, carrying a whole fish in its mouth like some triumphant pagan delivery service. The room lets out a half laugh, half sigh, and you feel your muscles loosen. You even consider taking a sip of that now dangerously tepid beer. That's when the wall begins to leak. Not water. Not blood, thank all the gods. Ink. Thick, black, slow-moving lines begin to ooze from the cracks in the mud brick wall behind the idol carver's table. They flow downward in thin tendrils, spreading across the floor in symbols. Not random lines. You recognize some of them from earlier, the same cuneiform shapes on the tablet Ninsala showed you. But these are upside down. No, Ninsala breathes. She drops to her knees and tries to smear them away. They smear, but as they do, more lines appear. Not quite matching her gestures, either. Almost as if they are responding. Someone whispers, it writes back. Cool. You take a step back. Into a small pile of dried dates. They squish. You curse. Quietly. Reverently. The old idol carver stares at the symbols and mutters a prayer to Nabu, god of scribes. Because, you see, Mesopotamians had a complicated relationship with writing. Cuneiform wasn't just communication, it was divine. Sacred. Dangerous. It was thought that words, once pressed into clay or etched into stone, could shape the world. Unwriting something was almost impossible. And yet here's a wall trying to compose its own narrative. In real time. That's not something your guidebook covered. Ninsala stands. Someone called it. You look at her. The Isaku. She shakes her head. Something older. Now, that's comforting. Fringe theories from Mesopotamian fringe texts, because even ancient cultures had their conspiracy nerds, referenced the nameless clay, a story of living earth that absorbs knowledge and eventually becomes sentient. Most historians write it off as metaphorical nonsense. But here it is. Writing in your general direction. The tavern feels smaller now. Hotter. You realize the air has stopped moving. No breeze through the door. No leaking wind through the cracked slats. Even the fire in the corner hearth is burning strangely still. Something is watching. You don't see it, but you feel it. A man stands. Not the kind of standing that says I need to pee, but the kind that says I have seen something and I no longer believe in the concept of chairs. He walks toward the wall slowly. Arms slightly out, like a sleepwalker or someone trying not to be picked up by motion-sensitive doom. He reaches out a hand. You whisper, "Don't." He touches the writing and drops. No scream. No collapse. He just crumples like a sack of spelt flour, instantly boneless. The barkeep moves to grab him. Ninsala stops him. "He's not gone," she says. "He's listening." You don't know what that means, and you don't ask. Because asking implies you want an answer. Instead, you do the most reasonable thing you've done all night. You try to leave. You take one step toward the door. It slams shut. On its own. That sound, the final, meaty thud of ancient timber, settles into your chest like the opposite of a lullaby. You are no longer just visiting this tavern. You are claimed. "Did anyone see who touched the gate last?" someone mutters. Someone else says, "I told you not to open it tonight. I told you." Historians still argue whether taverns near city walls, like this one, were thought to be liminal spaces. In-between zones. Not quite sacred, not quite profane. The perfect places for rituals no temple would tolerate. This might have been one of those nights. You scan the room. The barkeep is muttering to himself. The patrons are either frozen or slowly shifting into clusters. Even the rats have disappeared. Ninsala whispers, "Do you know a prayer?" You shake your head. She swears, softly. Then begins to chant. Not loud. Not theatrical. This isn't the summon the gods with thunder kind of chant. It's more like a lullaby for an entity you hope stays asleep. You catch a few names. Ereshkigal, goddess of the underworld. Namta, her messenger, bringer of plague. Great. This is the just-in-case category of divine contacts. You back away from the wall. Slowly. Eyes on the ink. Still moving. Still writing. But you notice something. It's beginning to shape figures. Human-like. Tall. Twisted. One of them has your nose. You nearly lose control of your bladder. The barkeep lights a new torch. He throws resin on the fire, and the room floods with the sharp scent of juniper and something like burning hair. It's meant to cleanse. It just makes your eyes sting. The wall groans. Not a metaphor. A real, low moan, like something inside the clay is trying to breathe through your reality. You think you hear your name. You didn't tell anyone your name. You no longer feel entirely you. That's the thing about Mesopotamian taverns, they weren't just watering holes. They were crossroads. Places where merchants, gods, criminals, and sometimes forces older than language all brushed shoulders over stale beer and slightly cursed soup. You're part of that now. Marked. Watched. Maybe rewritten. Your only comfort is Ninsala beside you, still chanting. Still painting her voice into the air like a protective line. And the wall? Still writing. Still watching. Still waiting. You lose track of time. Not in the charming, "Oh wow, it's already midnight" sort of way, but in the "is this still Tuesday or have we crossed into a pocket dimension where calendars cry" sort of way. The ink has slowed. The figures, those inky humanoid sketches crawling across the tavern wall, seem to pause mid-movement, mid-gesture, like they've realized you're watching. And they don't like being perceived. Which, honestly, same. Ninsala has stopped chanting. She's slumped against the wall, sweat glistening across her temples, lips moving soundlessly now. You don't know what worries you more, the ancient whisper prayers, or the absence of them. You turn to the idol carver. He's left the room. No one saw him go. A different woman, gray-haired and barefooted, steps forward instead. She lifts a bundle from behind the bar, old, wrapped in linen, sealed with a glob of hardened bitumen. She unties it slowly, reverently. Inside, a mask. Not a party mask. Not even a plague mask. This thing is stone, heavy, and disturbingly neutral. No expression. No eye holes. She lifts it like a sacred artifact, then places it on the floor between the hearth and the wall. The tavern shifts. No sound. Just pressure. A sense of awareness flooding the space like cold water down the back of your tunic. "Who are you people?" you whisper. Ninsala doesn't answer. The old woman says, "Caretakers." And that's all she offers. You don't ask again. Because here's the thing. Taverns in ancient Mesopotamia were not just places to drink. They were often run by priestesses, specifically alewives who served as intermediaries between mortal and divine. What you thought was a dive bar may very well be a shrine. Or worse, a trap. You sit down. You don't remember choosing to. Your knees simply buckle and the floor accepts you. There's something oddly reassuring about sitting on packed dirt when reality feels like a bowl of overcooked lentils. Across the room, the wall figures have stilled. And something new is happening. A line of ants. No, not ants. Symbols. Dozens of tiny cuneiform marks skittering across the floor, converging toward the mask. Each one only a few centimeters tall, but moving, like they know where they are going. They climb the mask. It absorbs them. Every last one. The mask begins to glow faintly. A dull red, like coals pretending to be asleep. You are, to put it gently, not okay. Someone finally speaks. The binding is incomplete. Whoever they are, their voice is hoarse from disuse. Could be the drunk who's now completely sober, or the shadowy figure standing suspiciously near the roof ladder. You want to ask what binding they're talking about. You don't. Because, historically, Mesopotamians were big on ritual bindings, magical inscriptions or spoken spells that tethered demons to specific objects, keeping them dormant or pacified. The trick was never in the creation. It was in the maintenance, which this place has clearly let lapse. Probably no maintenance package on ancient demon masks. The barkeep finally speaks again. It wants a voice. And because you're apparently the day's special, all eyes land on you. You shake your head. Nope. Hard pass. I've seen this movie. Again, wrong era. But the sentiment remains. A chorus of whispers follows. People not looking at you directly, but clearly talking about you. You hear stranger, chosen, marked. Never great signs in a room filled with creeping ink and unlicensed spiritual advisors. Then Ninsala looks up. Her voice is different now. Low, hollow. Not hers. It heard you at the ziggurat. Oh, right. That moment earlier. When you first spotted the priest in the alley and saw the half-buried temple tear. That brief ripple in the air. That subtle, universe-altering chill. Apparently, that's when you RSVP'd to the possession party. You stand up. Bad idea. The room tilts slightly, and a sharp ache pulses behind your left eye. It's not a headache. It's more like something on the inside trying to read you. You press a hand to your temple. The pain subsides. The mask flickers. You take one step forward. The tavern doesn't move. But everyone inside it seems to inhale as one. You kneel before the mask. And you say, because it feels required, "What do you want?" Nothing happens. Then, very faintly, the clay beneath the mask begins to crack. Not dramatically. Just a soft spider weaving of lines, like dried earth in the sun. Ninsala whispers, "It's listening." You decide to try something else. "I'm not from here." A pause. A longer crack forms. You add, I'm not a priest. I don't know your names. I don't belong here. Still nothing. Then, the mask lifts. Not floated. Not hoisted. Lifted. As if a hand made of ideas picked it up from the floor. You do scream this time. Just a little. It hovers in the air before you. A voice, not from the mask, but from somewhere beneath your feet, says a single word. Return. Now, here's a quirky side note. Some Mesopotamian belief systems included the idea of origin spirits, entities that predated not only gods but the concept of time and place. To them, everything foreign, every outsider, was not just unwelcome, it was fundamentally disruptive. You're not just strange. You're a threat. The mask turns to face you. No eyes, no mouth, but a tilt that feels disappointed. You whisper, return where? Another voice, this one distinctly local and very human, says behind you, to before. Before what? Before you walked into this tavern? Before you time traveled here? Before humans decided it was cool to ferment barley in questionable pottery? Too many options. You do not move. You do not speak again. The mask gently lowers back to the earth. The cracks close. The symbols fade. The tension does not. It's as if the tavern is now collectively holding its breath on your behalf. Ninsala crawls toward the mask and covers it again with the linen, her hands trembling. The barkeep turns to you. You are not safe. You reply, I kind of got that. But he doesn't mean it in the immediate, watch out for the guy with the dagger sense. He means existentially. You are now marked not just by a ritual or a misfired divination. You are an anomaly. An interruption. And the tavern is trying to decide whether to fix that or erase it. You sit back down at your table, which is somehow still holding your bowl of soup. It's cold. It was never good. But now, weirdly, it feels like the most human thing in the room. You eat a spoonful. Because if you're going down, you might as well not be hungry. The spoon clinks softly against the bowl, and it's the only sound in the tavern. Even the rats seem to have staged a silent protest. The soup tastes like disappointment marinated in regret. It's probably goat bone and lentils, maybe lizard if you're lucky. Still, you chew dutifully, because it keeps your mind tethered to something bland and mortal. No one else eats. They're all watching you with that cautious, side-eye energy normally reserved for wild dogs or particularly twitchy prophets. The barkeep pours himself a drink. Doesn't even bother with the cup this time, he just lifts the jug and gulps. You envy that level of surrender. We should take them to the courtyard, someone says. The barkeep grunts. And wake up the old ones? Are you mad? Another voice, they've already stirred. You saw the ink. I saw a tourist poke the wrong god. Same difference. You wipe your mouth on your sleeve and sigh. You know I can hear you, right? Ninsala touches your arm. Ignore them. You're still you. The way she says it doesn't feel terribly reassuring. You glance toward the curtain that leads out back. Someone's holding it open. An older man, weathered, with a face like cracked leather and eyes that have seen too many eclipses. He nods once. An invitation. Or a summons. You don't get the luxury of knowing which. Still, you stand. Because here's a thing most don't realize. Many Mesopotamian taverns had hidden courtyards tucked behind their main rooms. Not just for fresh air, these spaces doubled as sanctuaries, and sometimes as makeshift necropolises. Sacrifices, burials, offerings. That kind of thing. You step through the curtain, and the air changes instantly. Cooler. Older. It smells like damp clay, wilted flowers, and faint ash. The courtyard is surrounded by low mud brick walls etched with worn inscriptions. The moon glows above, full and indifferent, casting pale light over the cracked tiles and old fire pits. In the center, a pit. Not very deep, not dramatic, but clearly not just for trash. Ninsala murmurs, "It's where they bury names." You blink. "Come again." She points to the side of the pit. Dozens of small, flat clay tablets are half submerged in dirt. Each one stamped with symbols. Cuneiform. Names. See, in Mesopotamian culture, names held power, real, tangible power. To destroy someone's name, or bury it in sacred earth, was to erase them from divine memory. Like pulling a file from the god's cabinet. Ninsala walks to the edge. Picks up a tablet. Shows it to you. The symbols are smudged. Intentionally, you think. Erased midword. This one was a merchant. Tried to cheat the temple tithe. Claimed Nana, moon god, told him to. And? He died of tongue rot. Of course he did. You step closer to the pit and peer down. The bottom glints faintly. Some tablets are polished. Others are cracked, as if something tried to claw its way back up. The barkeep joins you. "We've only buried one outlander before," he says. "Didn't take." What happened? His name kept reappearing. On the walls. On the clay. In dreams. Sounds exhausting. He nods grimly. "We buried his tongue next. That helped." You back away slightly. The barkeep grins. "Just a little." That's when you notice the tablet in Ninsala's hands has fresh clay. Wet clay. You ask, with appropriate dread, "Is that for me?" She nods. "It's a backup." "Oh." Silence. A fire is lit in the corner of the courtyard. No one strikes it, it just sort of starts. The flames are low, blue, whispering upward like they're afraid to draw too much attention. You wonder, for a moment, what the historical record would say about this night. If anyone would remember. If anyone should. You, a tourist from the future, slurped some lentil goat goo and almost became a cosmic punctuation mark. If you're lucky, maybe you still can. The man who opened the curtain earlier clears his throat. "There's one more thing." You brace. He holds out a small dish. Inside, thick oil. Black. Reflective. "Look into it," he says. You hesitate. Then, because refusal seems both rude and vaguely fatal, you lean in. At first, it's just your face. Tired, slightly soup-smeared, and deeply annoyed. Then, ripples. Not on the surface. In you. Your reflection begins to shift. The nose elongates. The eyes narrow. You see yourself, but older. Or maybe earlier. You're wearing linen. You're carving a tablet. You're not you. And yet, you are. The vision flashes. Now you're lying in a grave. The grave is this courtyard. The mask from earlier is resting on your chest. You jerk back. The oil sloshes. You're breathing fast. You hate how loud it sounds. The man says, "That's your echo." Past life? Future failure. Cool. Ninsala gently takes your hand. Her skin is cool. Too cool. "It wants a trade," she says. "What kind of trade?" "Your voice for a name. Your memory for a story." "That's not a good deal." "No," she agrees. "But it's the only one left." You look down at the half-formed tablet. Your name isn't on it. Not yet. But the stylus is ready. Press once and you're part of history. Press wrong and you're part of legend. Historians still argue whether these kinds of rituals were literal or symbolic. Were names truly buried to destroy influence? Or was it just a social control mechanism? A way to warn others, stray from the gods, and your legacy becomes compost. You're not sure which you'd prefer. You take the stylus. It's heavier than it should be. You press the first mark, then the second. By the third, your hand is shaking. You stop. You look at Ninsala. Will this make it leave me alone? She doesn't answer. You press the final mark. The clay dries instantly. The fire sputters out. Something deep in the earth exhales. And above you, the stars blink. 1, 2, gone. You don't scream. But you should. Because when stars vanish like that, just wink out, you're not watching astronomy. You're watching an eviction notice. Some cosmic force just redacted a piece of the sky, and you're the one holding the stylus. The courtyard is silent. The tablet in your hands is warm, vibrating slightly, like it remembers how to be alive. Now what, you ask? Because what else is there to say? Ninsala doesn't answer. She just presses her forehead to the ground, facing the pit. You glance at the barkeep. His lips are moving, but the words are silent. Could be a prayer. Could be the tavern's Wi-Fi password for all you know at this point. The man who brought the oil bowl steps forward, and for the first time, you realize something about him has never changed. He hasn't blinked. Not once. Not since you got here. You test your own eyes. Blink. Confirm you're still human. Sort of. Step into the circle, he says. You look down. There's a ring around the fire pit, thin, etched with a fresh groove. You swear it wasn't there 2 minutes ago. No one forces you. But they all watch. So you step inside. The air thickens. Smells like copper and old paper. Sounds become muffled. Your heartbeat echoes slightly louder. Like it's the only beat allowed in this rhythm now. The man holds up your name tablet. He doesn't chant. He sings. It's not a melody you recognize. But your bones do. Some part of you deeper than genetics and logic starts humming along. Against your will. The courtyard responds. Dust swirls in slow motion. The moon above ripples, like it's being reflected in water rather than suspended in space. And the fire, what little is left of it, rises up in a single thin line, pointing directly toward the stars that are no longer there. You speak without meaning to. Your voice, but not your words. I bind the name to the clay. I return the breath to the dust. Okay. Creepy. In ancient Mesopotamian rites, especially those linked to exorcism and spiritual redirection, there were ceremonies in which an outsider, like a traveler or wanderer, would be used as a vessel to redirect curses or lost spirits. The theory was that their foreignness made them spiritually hollow, a clean slate. You, apparently, fit the bill. The tablet crumbles in the man's hands. Ninsala gasps. The barkeep whispers something to the wall. The circle glows faintly. You're not alone in it. There's a second shadow. Not yours. It flickers once. Tall. Unbending. Wearing robes? You turn, but there's no one there. Yet the shadow remains. It moves when you move. But not in sync. Slightly behind. Slightly delayed. Like it's learning. You speak again, involuntarily. I give what is not mine to give. The fire drops. The circle vanishes. You collapse. When you come to, you're back at the table. Soup still cold. The tavern back to its usual half-lit, incense-choked, vaguely traumatized self. But there's a detail missing. The barkeep is gone. So is the man with the oil. Only Ninsala remains. And she looks aged. Not a little tired aged. We're talking decades slipped off her like smoke aged. Her face is hollowed. Her hair streaked with silver. She smiles weakly. You did well. I didn't do anything, you protest. She nods anyway. Then what just happened, you ask. Her answer is quiet. You became the reason someone else can wake up tomorrow. Which sounds poetic and also completely useless. You try standing again. Limbs still work. Hands still yours. No visible possession. Bonus points. You wander toward the wall. The ink figures are still there. Still. Not creeping. Frozen mid-movement. Some even smile. Not in a comforting way, in that I've seen your credit score kind of way. A breeze slips in through the shuttered window. And with it, something small and folded. It flutters to the ground beside your foot. You bend down. It's not paper. It's a scrap of leather. Pressed flat. Inked in tight rows. A map. Or more likely, a warning. On one corner, a symbol you've seen before, carved into the ziggurat's base, half buried in mud. You trace it with your thumb. Your hand burns. Briefly. Then settles. Ninsala touches your shoulder. Her voice is smaller now. They want you to leave. Who's they? She tilts her head toward the rafters. You look up. A pair of eyes gleam. Not human. You blink, and they are gone. Fringe archaeologists still debate whether Mesopotamians believed their gods lived among them literally, or only sent emissaries, creatures shaped like men but charged with divine energy. There are references to watchers in temple texts, beings who recorded but never intervened. Observers. Accountants of fate. You seem to have drawn their interest. So now you know. You are watched. You are documented. And, according to every face in this tavern, you are now too far from normal to be welcome here. Ninsala doesn't say goodbye. She just points to the curtain. No final ritual. No celebratory beer. No get-out-of-damnation-free card. You push through the fabric. Back into the street. And you swear, for 1 second, you hear your own voice whispering behind you. But you're not speaking. And that's not your mouth. The night air hits your face like a bucket of river water, and thank every star that's still visible for that. Cool, dry, real. No ghosts, no ink creatures, no whispering flames. Just the stale scent of dung smoke and distant sheep, as nature intended. You don't run. But you also don't look back. Because back means questions. And you're out of those. Your curiosity has hit its limit. It's folded its arms, muttered something about lesson learned, and is taking a long sabbatical. You walk. Boots scraping on stone. The occasional meaty squish from a fruit long past its prime. The alleys are quieter now. Not empty, but hushed. Like the city itself is holding its breath. Or maybe it's watching. That's a fun thought. You pass a wall with fresh graffiti, cuneiform symbols etched into plaster with what looks like a chicken bone. Not art. Not even vandalism. Just the word for void repeated 3 times. You don't touch it. A dog slinks past. One of those lean Mesopotamian breeds, half jackal, half conspiracy theory. It glances at you and immediately changes direction. You try not to take it personally. You reach the edge of the marketplace. It's not bustling anymore. Just a few stalls half covered in reed mats, and one merchant asleep under a pile of dates. His snoring sounds like an irrigation wool trying to retire early. You consider waking him, asking if he's seen anything weird. But then again, what would you even say? Excuse me, sir, has time felt unusually elastic lately? Right. Instead, you sit on a low wall and let your breath catch up. That's when you notice it. The breeze. Again. But it's not the same as before. This one smells sweet, like burned honey and crushed blossoms. And it's coming from the wrong direction, the desert side, where no one lives, where only ruins and sand snakes lie. You glance left. And there it is. A glow. Just past the line of tents, in the dry zone where the city ends and myth begins. You shouldn't follow it. But of course, you do. Because that's the kind of bad decision maker you've grown into tonight. In Mesopotamian lore, the edges of cities were not just physical boundaries, they were spiritual liminal zones. The line between cultivated order and divine chaos. It's why many temples stood at city perimeters, to anchor the world where it frayed. You pass a toppled statue. Probably meant to be Ishtar, but the face is eroded and someone's carved a bird head where hairs used to be. Fitting. As you cross into the dry ground, your steps crunch louder. The stones here are bleached. And underfoot, yes, of course, shards of clay tablets. Just lying in the dirt like forgotten homework. Each one broken. Each one whispering, if you dare to listen. You don't. But they whisper anyway. Your name. Not loudly, but clearly. You speed up. The glow ahead flickers. Now you can see the source, a bonfire ringed by half-collapsed pillars. A ruin. But the fire burns steady, surrounded by a circle of seated figures. 12 of them. They don't move. They might not be alive. You step closer, and the air thickens. Not like the Tavern circle, this isn't ritual. This is presence. Like someone put a thumb on reality and pressed hard. One of the figures raises a hand. You freeze. It gestures once. A curl of the finger. Come closer. So naturally, you do the opposite and take a step back. The figure tilts its head. You hear a voice, but not with your ears. More like it's being beamed in through a dream you haven't had yet. You carry the name. I do. You pressed it. You sealed it. You swallowed the burden. I was told it was temporary. There's a long pause. Then, lies are soft ways to say yes. Neat. You take a breath. Who are you? All of us, the voice says. None of us. Helpful. The fire crackles. You realize something. The glow isn't coming from the flames. It's coming from the ground. The sand under your feet is lit from beneath. Not hot, just luminous. Like you're standing on a backlit map of a city that was buried before this one ever rose. You kneel and brush it with your hand. The symbols there are older than cuneiform. Too old. And they move. Like worms under glass. You jerk back. The voice in your head smiles without smiling. You see now. What am I seeing? The first name. The seed of language. The sound before sound. I'm an exchange student. I was hoping to learn about farming. The harvest has begun. That's when one of the seated figures stands. Tall. Skin like baked river clay. A robe that shifts between woven linen and absolute black. It walks toward you. Doesn't speak. Doesn't breathe. You can't tell if it's priest, guardian, or something worse. It holds out a jar. Small. Sealed with wax and twine. Your fingers move before your brain agrees. You take it. The moment it touches your palm, you hear everything. Screams. Laughter. Stone being chiseled. A baby's name shouted across a garden. Some fringe researchers speculate about ancient Mesopotamian name jars, sealed vessels meant to trap voices or spiritual echoes. Though largely unproven, a few obscure digs found small clay pots buried beneath thresholds, marked with single-syllable inscriptions. Scholars still argue whether these were spells, memorials, or primitive voicemail. You grip the jar tightly. "You must carry it," the voice says. "To the well." You blink. "What well?" But the circle is gone. The fire is gone. You're alone again. Standing in the sand. Holding something that thrums like a swallowed earthquake. Behind you, the city walls shimmer. And the path back no longer feels like yours. You walk. Because, at this point, stopping feels dangerous. Like if you pause too long, you'll start unraveling from the soles of your feet upward. The jar is warm. Not burn your hand warm, more like the low, insistent heat of a secret. Not quite alive, but not dead either. It pulses now and then, as if something inside is breathing. You make for the city again, but the walls don't get closer. They hover on the horizon, like a mirage that forgot it's supposed to vanish. Then you see the tower. It wasn't there 5 minutes ago. It rises crookedly, like a ziggurat that started building itself and got bored halfway up. Stones jut out at odd angles. Vines twist where no vines should grow. The top vanishes into a cloud that doesn't move. It hums. Yes, the tower hums. Like someone strung the bones of the universe like harp strings and plucked a minor chord just for you. You don't want to go in. So naturally, your feet take you there. The entrance is a gaping arch, carved with spirals and beasts that loop in on themselves. Eyes that are mouths. Wings that are hands. The door is not a door. Just air that resists slightly when you pass through it. Inside, the temperature drops 10 degrees. Cool stone. The faint scent of cedar and something metallic, like a shrine that forgot what it was worshipping. The floor is covered in dust. But only your footsteps appear. You're alone. Sort of. Because after a few steps, your shadow starts lagging again. Just like in the courtyard. It moves a beat after you. Tilts its head when you don't. You speak to it. Because sure, why not? Friend or enemy? It raises its hand. Points forward. Helpful. You keep going. The hallway narrows. The walls pulse faintly. Your ears pop. Then, stairs. Stone. Spiral. Going down, not up. Because of course. As you descend, the sounds begin. A slow rhythm. Like drums underwater. Then, voices. But they're not speaking to you. They are practicing. Syllables repeated over and over. B-A. K-A. Moo. Loo. Is. Names? Spells? Grocery lists? You don't ask. You just keep going. At the bottom of the stairs, you find the well. Not a wishing well. Not even a water source, really. It's a circle of void. Perfectly black. Not reflective. Not absorbing. Just present. Like someone carved a hole in existence and then framed it in stone. You're not alone anymore. 4 figures stand around it. Not facing you. Not facing each other. They just stand. One has the head of a goat. Another wears a crown of reeds and glass beads. A third has no face at all, just a smooth surface where features should be, like wet clay waiting to decide what it wants to be. And the fourth? The fourth is wearing your clothes. Down to the mismatched sandals. You do not like that. But they do not move. Not yet. You step forward. The jar throbs. Hard. Like it knows its home. You look down into the well. Nothing. You drop a pebble in. It does not land. It doesn't even fall. It just vanishes, like a deleted sentence. And the moment you do that, the figure in your clothes turns its head. And you realize it isn't mimicking you. It's remembering you. From before. Before this night. Before this life? Too much. Your breath shortens. Your mouth goes dry. But your hand moves on its own. Lifts the jar. The faceless one hisses. The goat-headed one bows. The reed-crowned one claps, softly, politely, like a guest at a dream theater play they don't quite understand. Your twin steps closer. You hear a voice again, not from the jar. From below. Do you give it freely? Do I have a choice? You whisper. Always, the voice says. You always do. You glance at the figures. They do not answer. So you do the only thing left. You tip the jar. The wax seal doesn't break. It melts. And from the mouth of the jar pours smoke. But it doesn't rise. It falls. Into the well. Curling downward in ribbons of gold and gray. And with it, sound. Laughter. Sobs. Chants. A scream in Sumerian. A lullaby in Akkadian. Some cuneiform inscriptions mention the breath of the name, a mystical concept tied to the idea that language itself is alive. In temple rituals, certain names were never spoken aloud, only exhaled through specific instruments, like bone flutes or hollow reeds, believed to carry the soul of speech without binding it to the speaker. Historians still argue whether this was metaphorical or an early understanding of sonic resonance. The jar empties. You expect it to collapse, crumble, explode. Instead, it becomes light. The clay glows, cracks, and lifts from your hand like a moth drawn to flame. It vanishes above. And with it, so does your twin. Gone in a blink. No scream. No farewell. Just not there. The others dissolve. Each in their own way. The goat head sighs and turns into a heap of salt. The faceless one folds inward, like paper collapsing into a singularity. The crown wearer simply walks into a wall and doesn't come out the other side. You are alone. Again. The well remains. Now silent. Now still. You feel lighter, as though something just unclenched in your spine. Like you've been holding a thought for years and only now released it. But you're also cold. And tired. And the tower starts shaking. Of course. You run. The stairs seem shorter now. The hallways wider. And when you burst out of the knot door, dawn is bleeding into the sky like someone punctured the night too soon. You're back. The city, still distant, shimmers with firelight and morning smoke. But the path there is clear. And behind you, the tower sighs. One long, low breath. Then crumbles. Quietly. No dramatic boom. Just stones settling into memory. And as dust curls upward, you hear one last phrase. You were not meant to survive this. But here you are. Still breathing. For now. The road back is unfamiliar in a familiar way. Like retracing a dream you've only half forgotten, where the shapes are right but the angles are all wrong. The air feels thicker now, not with heat, but with time. Like you're walking through the slowest part of a clock. Your feet drag. Every step is a little less certain, like the ground isn't entirely on board with your choice to still be standing. You glance at your hands. They are fine. No burns. No cracks. No strange glowing script. Except, there is a mark. A faint line across your palm. A curve. like part of a cuneiform wedge. You rub it. It doesn't rub off. Of course it doesn't. You don't ask questions anymore. You just keep walking. The city gates are closer now, and this time they let you in without ceremony. No dogs. No kids. No suspiciously enthusiastic bureaucrats with family curses. Just the breeze and a few tired guards who don't even blink as you pass. Maybe you're invisible. Maybe they see you and pretend not to. You take it as a win either way. Back in the city proper, the light is changing. It's not full dawn yet, but it's flirting with it. The rooftops glow gold. Chimney smoke rises in lazy spirals. Someone somewhere is singing. A soft, low melody, probably about sheep, love, or death. The usual three. You realize something. The city has reset. Everything you just saw, the tower, the well, the weird quartet of silent nightmare friends, it's like it never happened. But you happened. You're still carrying the memory. And the mark. And maybe something else. Because as you pass the same market square from earlier, a woman at a fruit stall makes eye contact with you and nods. Not a high nod. A we both know the sky has teeth nod. You do not stop. You do not buy fruit. You nod back. And keep moving. The tavern is ahead. Yes, that tavern. It shouldn't still be standing. But it is. Crooked. Soot-stained. Humming softly, like it's nursing a hangover and trying not to make eye contact with the gods. You approach. The door is ajar. Because of course it is. Inside, it's unchanged. Tables still covered in amphorae and crumbs. The floor still faintly sticky. The fire pit cold now, but still blackened from its earlier misbehavior. And the same group of patrons slumped over their cups, like the last few hours didn't even register. You half expect someone to look up and say, "Where have you been? We're just getting to the good part." But no one notices you. Not even the barmaid. She's back. Alive. Or close enough. Carrying a tray of flatbread with the glazed expression of someone who's accepted every cosmic horror with casual disinterest. She passes right by you. You're not sure if that's comforting or not. You sit. Same table. Same cracked mug. Same faint whiff of fermented onion. You exhale. And that's when you hear it. A whisper. Not from a person. Not from the fire. From under the table. You lean down. You know you shouldn't. But you do. And there it is. Another jar. Identical to the one you carried. But this one is sealed with lead. Your hand reaches for it. And stops. Because this time, the whisper doesn't ask to be carried. It says one word. Wait. That's it. Just wait. You jerk back upright and find the tavern frozen. Every drinker. Every fly. Even the shadows, they've stopped moving. Only you and the jar exist in real time. And from the silence, a hum begins again. But this time, it's coming from you. Your chest vibrates. Your bones buzz like tuning forks. You glance down, and the mark on your palm glows faintly. Pulses in rhythm with the hum. You stand. The tavern doesn't change. You walk to the door. No one stops you. No one can. Because the moment you cross the threshold, time snaps back into place like a whip cracking. And you hear a mug shatter behind you. Like punctuation. The street is full of people now. Morning people. Vendors setting up. Kids with sticks. Priests with serious expressions and suspiciously shiny sandals. They all ignore you. You're not part of the play anymore. You're backstage. Observing. Or maybe observed. You move through the city like a ghost with unfinished business. But you're not sure what that business is. Because something's missing. Something important. And you only realize what when you pass a shrine. Tiny. Wedged between two bakeries. You wouldn't have noticed it before. But now you see it. A tiny clay altar. An offering bowl filled with salt. And a name. Etched in tiny, perfect cuneiform. Your name. Written correctly. Mainstream historians recognize the widespread practice of household shrines across Mesopotamian cities, dedicated not just to major gods, but to personal spirits, ancestors, and even unspoken guardian entities. Many bore single names written on clay tokens, meant to act as anchors for memory or protection. You stare at it. A name you never gave. A name you didn't know. But here it is. Yours. Etched long before you ever arrived. And that's when it clicks. You weren't a visitor here. You weren't even the first version of you to walk these streets. You were returning. Completing something. Closing a circuit older than iron and fire. And in your pocket? Another jar. Because of course. The sealed one. Still whispering. Still waiting. You do not open it. You do not drop it in a well. You place it gently at the shrine's base. And for the first time all night, no wind. No glow. No hum. Just stillness. A breath held. Then released. You step back. And walk away. No applause. No transformation. But for the first time since you arrived, you feel lighter. Like maybe, just maybe, you'll make it to sunrise after all. You move through the city with a strange new calm. Not confidence, let's not get ahead of ourselves, but a sense that the world is no longer actively conspiring to chew you up and spit you out in a jar labeled miscellaneous haunting. The streets stretch before you like pages yet to be written. Cobblestones warm underfoot. The sky a pale lavender, brushing toward blue. You breathe it in slowly, the air a little sweeter now, like someone turned down the sulfur and added a pinch of fig blossom. You don't know where you're going. That used to be terrifying. Now it's almost nice. You pass a group of men unloading fish from reed baskets. One of them nods politely, as if you're part of the neighborhood now. You nod back, not quite ready to commit to the full sup gesture, but getting there. Further on, a girl draws in the dust with a stick. You glance down. She's sketching a spiral. The exact shape from the jar seal. You crouch beside her. "Do you know what that is?" you ask softly. She shrugs. "Just came to me," she says, not looking up. You watch her for a moment longer, then stand. You could warn her. You don't. Because maybe she's supposed to find the next one. Just like you did. Near the river, the city's hum begins to pick up. Boatmen shouting across the water. Donkey carts groaning under baskets of dates. Priests chanting blessings in that sing-song that might be sacred or might just be good PR. And there, across the canal, is something familiar. The house from before. The one with the salt line. The dog's skull. The door that opened on its own. It's still there. Less haunted looking now, more neglected summer rental. But still. The door creaks open again, and you don't hesitate this time. Because you've come full circle. Inside, it's cooler. The same carved idols. The same scent of burnt cedar and sun-warmed clay. But this time, a figure sits at the back of the room. An old man. Not ancient, just old enough that everything he does feels deliberate. He gestures to a cushion. You sit. He does not ask who you are. He knows. You wait. Finally, he speaks. In the dream of this place, you are always late. You blink. Late for what? He smiles. Whatever you thought you were early for. Right. That clears things up. He pours 2 cups of something. It smells like honey and smoke. You sip. It tastes like regret and cardamom. I saw the jar, you say. Of course. I gave it to the well. He nods. And the well remembered. You pause. What was it? He raises one brow. Does it matter? You want to say yes. You want to demand meaning, structure, closure. But all you say is, maybe not. You drink more. He sets his cup down and leans in. There are stories that are too old to tell with words, he says. So we store them. In shapes. In songs. In clay. But even stories grow tired. And sometimes, they want to be forgotten. You nod slowly. So I helped forget something? You helped let go. You glance around the room. It feels thinner than before. Like the walls are barely pretending to be solid. Like this house exists on loan from reality. He stands. You'll need to go soon, he says. Where? Forward. You look toward the door. It's no longer there. Just open space, glowing faintly. The edges of morning, perhaps. Or something else entirely. Will I remember this, you ask? He pauses. Enough of it to make you strange. Fair. You stand. The floor feels firmer than it did a moment ago. Your body heavier, but not in a burdensome way. More like anchored. You bow slightly. He does not return the gesture. He's already fading. As you step into the light, the world tilts. And you realize you're on a rooftop. Back in the city. Only now the sun has just begun to break the horizon. Real sunlight. Not torchlight or magical glow or suspicious bioluminescence. The real thing. And in the distance, the tavern crumbles. No explosion. No fire. Just a quiet settling. Like a story finally ending a chapter. You don't run this time. You just watch. And then you laugh. Because you realize. You made it. You, the unlikely time tourist, the jar courier, the reluctant dream archaeologist. You survived the night. Not unscathed. But not broken either. And as the city yawns itself awake, as the people stretch and yawn and sweep their stoops like none of this ever happened, you feel it. A hum. But this time, it's inside you. A soft resonance. Like the memory of a name whispered just once and never again. Historians still argue whether these ancient rituals were real, symbolic, or something in between. Whether the jars were simple offerings or containers of something more dangerous. Whether travelers like you, outsiders in space and time, were seen as omens or mistakes. You don't have the answer. You just have the sunrise. And, for once, that's enough. The rooftops below stretch wide and drowsy, yawning themselves into a new day. You sit at the edge of one, legs swinging lazily over a centuries-old drop, watching Mesopotamia uncrumple from the folds of night. The city below begins to exhale. Vendors tug open canopies, donkeys bray indignantly at morning workloads, temple bells ring not in alarm this time, but in the quiet rhythm of ritual. The air smells of baked earth and rising bread. And you? You are something different now. Not just a visitor. Not just a strange dream in someone else's history. You are stitched into the mythos, by accident or design, by whim or curse. Hard to say. Below, a scribe begins sweeping the stone courtyard of a school, brushing away the night's dust. A sharp boy in linen recites lines from the Epic of Gilgamesh, his voice cracking, his eyes already tired. He mangles a few syllables, and the teacher winces. You smile. It all goes on. Without you. And yet also, with you. Because now, you know the backrooms of this place. The unseen layers. You know that in the shadows behind temples and down the throat of a half-buried well, there are things ancient and animate. Things the priests pretend not to notice. The kind of things you return to. Or may be released. Historians agree that Mesopotamia was built in layers, each new empire constructing atop the bones of the last. Ur upon Uruk upon Eridu. Some cities, they say, have never truly been lost. They just lie dormant, waiting under dust and irrigation canals, still dreaming their names. You saw one of those dreams last night. And you left a part of yourself there. In the jar. In the whisper. In the salt on the altar. It's not a tether. It's a placeholder. In case you come back. And you might. Because the city remembers. It always does. Back on the rooftop, something shifts in your pocket. You forgot you had anything left. You reach in. It's a single shard of fired clay, half of a cuneiform tablet. Your name's not on it. But the symbol for witness is. You run your thumb across the rough surface. And sigh. No need to decode it. The meaning is clear. You didn't just survive the tavern. You testified to it. And to everything that followed. A witness to a night that shouldn't exist. The final hours of darkness pull away behind you like the trailing edge of a curtain, and the sun burns gold against the walls of ziggurats and clay homes. People move like they always have, fetching water, haggling over garlic, cursing sand in their sandals. They have no idea. Or maybe they do, and they are just better at pretending. Either way, it's not your burden anymore. You stand slowly, legs sore, body humming with the weight of stories never told. The streets call again. But softly this time. Not like a trap. Like a lullaby. And with that, you begin to descend, back into the city, into the hum, into the reality of a world older than myth and more fragile than memory. And as your feet hit the ground, the jar sealed beneath the shrine lets out one final, gentle click. The sound of something locking shut. Or unlocking, depending on which way you're facing. Wind down begins here. And now the sounds fade. The footfalls of the city slow to a whisper. The sunrise becomes diffuse, soft, golden light spilling across your thoughts. You no longer walk, you drift. The clay buildings blur into one another, the laughter of children distorts into birdsong, and every heartbeat sounds like the echo of an ancient drum. There are no more decisions. No more strange doors, no more jars, no more symbols to decode. Only breath. And the gentle memory of having been somewhere impossible. It clings to you not as fear, but as warmth. You made it. You walked through 1,000 fears, and you did not shatter. You saw the cracks in the world, and you didn't fall through. You were meant to vanish before sunrise, but here you are. Whole. Dream-wrapped. Safe. And as sleep begins to pull you under, slow, soft, and certain, you realize that the scariest thing about that ancient Mesopotamian tavern wasn't the spirits or the curses or the watchful, humming dark. It was how much of yourself you left behind in it. And how much more of you returned. Now rest, fellow time traveler. The jars are sealed. The well is silent. And the city, old, patient, and eternal, sings you softly toward sleep.